In the land of the living, amidst the bustling world and the clamor of daily life, there is a truth that few can see, an unseen force that watches, waits, and prepares. This is the truth that every soul must come to understand. It is the truth that, at this very moment, God is watching, not as an observer but as a judge. His gaze does not simply look upon you in passing, but with great scrutiny, searching for those who will fulfill His will upon the earth. Those who would be worthy to carry His light through the darkness of the world. But behold, there is a mystery known only to the faithful. Not all who are called are chosen. And those who are chosen must face tests, trials, and tribulations, for only through these will they prove their worth. Many are called, but few are prepared to undergo the crucible of divine purpose. To be chosen by God is no small thing. It is a privilege, a burden, and a calling all at once. It requires great courage and unwavering faith. Imagine, if you will, a moment when God Himself, the Creator of all, looks upon you and chooses you to carry out His will. This is no ordinary calling, this is an invitation to step into the very plans of heaven. To work alongside the Almighty to bring about His kingdom on earth. To be chosen means to step into a role of divine significance. But it also means to face trials that will test the very core of your being. The first of these trials is the test of waiting. The test of waiting. In the land of Israel, there lived a man named Abraham, a man whose faith was tested by time. God had promised him a son, a great heir who would carry his name, yet years passed. And the promise seemed as though it were a distant dream. For 25 years, Abraham waited. He waited through barren seasons, through silence, through the mocking of others, and even through moments of doubt. Yet still, he held on to his faith. God has promised me a son, Abraham would say in the quiet of his heart, and though the years drag on, I will not lose hope. His faith was tested, not by the trials of the world, but by the weight of waiting. For what is waiting but the act of trusting when nothing seems to change? What is waiting but the moment when you must hold on to your belief even when everything around you tells you to give up? And so, Abraham waited, year after year. And the silence from heaven grew deafening. But in that silence, God was working. In the stillness, He was preparing something greater than Abraham could imagine. The birth of Isaac was not merely the fulfillment of a promise, it was a moment that would change the course of history. Abraham's story is not just a tale of patience. It is a story of obedience. It is a story of trust. And it is a story that echoes in the hearts of all who seek God's will but find themselves standing in the waiting room of life. How often have we felt as Abraham did? Holding on to hope while the world around us falls apart? How often have we prayed for deliverance, yet found no answer? The waiting is never easy, but it is in the waiting that we are refined. The test of obedience. Yet, there is another test that every chosen one must face, a test even harder than waiting. It is the test of obedience. In the days of Noah, God spoke to a man who would come to be known as the righteous one. Noah, God said, I have seen the wickedness of the earth, and it grieves my heart. But you, Noah, you are righteous. Build an ark. For I will bring a flood to cleanse the earth. Can you imagine the weight of such a command? To be told to build a boat, not just a boat, but a massive vessel that would carry life through a worldwide deluge. Noah was a man who had never seen rain, a man who had never known the fury of a flood. Yet, God commanded him to build. And Noah obeyed. The world mocked him. His neighbors called him a fool. The task was daunting, the ridicule unrelenting. But Noah did not waver. He obeyed. Noah's obedience was not born out of understanding, for who could understand such a command? No, his obedience was born out of faith, a deep, abiding trust in the will of God. He trusted that God knew what was best, even when it seemed impossible. His act of obedience was not just about building a boat, it was about submitting his will to God's. And so it is with us. God asks us to obey, not because he desires control, but because obedience opens the door to divine partnership. How often do we resist God's commands because they do not make sense to our finite minds? How often do we hesitate to forgive, to love, to serve, because the cost seems too great? Yet, it is through obedience that we step into our divine purpose. In the quiet moments when God asks something of us, something that seems impossible, something that seems ridiculous, will we obey? Will we surrender our plans and trust that his will is greater than our own? For it is only through obedience that we align ourselves with the work of God, and in that alignment, we discover our true purpose. The consequences of disobedience. But not all are faithful. Not all are willing to submit. For those who fail to obey, there are consequences. Abraham, too, faltered in his faith. He grew impatient with God's promise. His wife, Sarah, offered him a solution, a maidservant named Hagar. Perhaps this is the way God intends to fulfill his promise, Sarah suggested. And so, Abraham, though hesitating, took Hagar as his wife and fathered a child, Ishmael. Yet, the birth of Ishmael was not the fulfillment of God's promise. It was a mistake. A misstep born of impatience and fear. God did not honor Ishmael as the son of promise. No, he had something greater in mind. Isaac was the child of promise. And only Isaac could carry forward the covenant that God had made with Abraham. How often do we make similar mistakes? How often do we take matters into our own hands when God seems slow to act? How often do we try to force God's will, thinking we know better, only to find that our efforts lead to confusion and hardship? The story of Abraham teaches us that God's timing is perfect. His plan is always better than our own, and when we step ahead of him, we risk missing out on the fullness of his blessings. The call to trust. The test of waiting and the test of obedience are not just random trials, they are invitations to deeper trust. It is easy to trust when everything is going well. True faith is tested in the wilderness. It is in the seasons of waiting, in the moment of uncertainty, that God refines us. He shapes us into vessels fit for his use. And what is the reward for those who pass these tests? The reward is not comfort, not ease, but purpose. Those who wait on the Lord will rise up with renewed strength. Those who obey will see the hand of God move in ways they never imagined. And they will discover a life of divine partnership, a life where the Creator of the universe works through them to accomplish his will. The eternal promise. The promise of God is not just for this life. The tests we face are not merely temporal, they have eternal significance. for those who pass the tests of waiting and obedience. There is a crown of life, a reward beyond what the eye can see. And even as we walk through the fire, we are being made ready for the glory that awaits us in heaven. So, brothers and sisters, the call is clear. Will you wait on the Lord? Will you trust in His timing? Will you obey His will, even when it seems impossible? The road may be long, the trials many, but the reward is greater than any hardship we face. God is preparing you for greatness. He is refining you for His purpose. And when the time comes, when you are chosen, you will stand in awe at the great things God has accomplished through you.